3 weeks ago, my entire world flipped upside down. My name is Kristen Walsh. I'm 30, an accountant in a small town near Albuquerque, New Mexico. I thought I was the reliable daughter, the one who kept my family afloat. For years, I paid their bills, electricity, water, even the costs to keep our family bakery running. But then I found out my parents had a secret. They wrote a will, and guess what? They left every single brick of that bakery, the one thing holding our family's legacy together, to my sister. Not a dime for me. Nothing. I was gutted, like someone had ripped the ground out from under me. I sat in my car staring at the lawyer's papers, my hands shaking. All those years of sacrifice, all the money I poured in, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they chose her. She, who never lifted a finger, who spent her days shopping and traveling while I worked overtime. I could have let it slide, but I was done being the doormat. So I made a choice. I secretly stopped paying their bills, every last one. No warning, no explanation. When they realized the lights were about to go out and the bakery's suppliers started calling, they blew up my phone. I let it ring, then finally answered one call. Too late, I said, and hung up. I blocked their numbers and didn't look back. What happened next? It's a wild ride. Stick around to see how it all unfolded. If this happened to you, would you choose to forgive or cut all ties? Share your thoughts in the comments. I will read every single one. Let me take you back to how this all started. 3 years ago, I became the backbone of my family's finances. As an accountant, I was used to balancing budgets. So when Mom and Dad asked for help, I stepped up without hesitation. Every month, I covered their utilities, electricity, water, gas, and poured money into keeping our family bakery running. We're talking supplier payments, equipment repairs, and even staff wages when things got tight. It wasn't just pocket change. I was shelling out thousands month after month to keep the lights on and the ovens hot. I didn't mind at first. That bakery built by my grandparents was where we'd spent Sunday mornings kneading dough and laughing together. It felt like keeping their legacy alive. Meanwhile, Tara, my sister, was living a different story. She'd breeze into town with new designer bags fresh from some extravagant trip, Paris one month, Miami the next. She never chipped in a dime. Not for the house, not for the bakery, nothing. I'd see her post photos online, sipping cocktails by a pool while I was crunching numbers late at night to cover another bill. It stung, but I brushed it off. Family's family, right. What hurt more was how Mom and Dad always had her back. If I mentioned Tara's spending, they'd say she was finding herself or needed a break. I'd sacrificed my own dreams, buying a house, building a retirement fund just to keep them afloat. I'd sit at my desk double-checking their accounts, making sure every payment cleared. I thought I was doing the right thing, holding our family together. I never suspected they'd take it all for granted. Looking back, I was too trusting. I managed their finances with precision, but I didn't see the bigger picture. The bakery wasn't just a business. It was a symbol of our family's history. I'd spent hours there as a kid, learning to roll out dough, listening to my grandparents' stories. Those memories kept me going even when I was exhausted from work. But every time Tara showed up flaunting her latest splurge, I felt a knot in my stomach. Mom and Dad would smile, pat her on the back, and tell me to be patient. She'll come around, they'd say. I believed them. I kept paying, kept sacrificing, kept hoping things would balance out. I couldn't have been more wrong. The truth was, I was carrying the weight of their choices. Choices I didn't even know about yet. I thought I was the one holding the reins, but I was just a piece in their game. And Tara. She wasn't just carefree, she was banking on my hard work. That realization hit me later, but back then I was blind to it. I'd go over the books, make sure every cent was accounted for, and send another check. I didn't ask questions. I didn't push back when Mom called to say the bakery needed more cash for upgrades. I just paid. It's hard to admit now, but I felt invisible. Mom and Dad's praise for Tara, their excuses for her, made me question my place in the family. I wasn't asking for a medal, but a little acknowledgement would have gone a long way. Instead, I got silence. Or worse, their defense of her. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that they'd see my effort. I was wrong about that too. The bakery, the bills, the sacrifices. It was all leading to a moment that would change everything. It was a rainy Tuesday when I walked into Mr. Reed's office. I'd been called in to sign what I thought were routine tax documents for the family bakery. As an accountant, I handled those kinds of things all the time, so I didn't think twice. Mr. Thomas Reed, the lawyer who'd known my family for years, greeted me with a tight smile. He slid a folder across his desk, and I opened it expecting numbers and forms. Instead, I found a will, my parents' will. My heart sank as I read the first line. The entire bakery, our family's pride and joy, was left to Tara. My name wasn't even mentioned. Not a single word. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. I looked up, my voice shaking. "This can't be right, Mr. Reed, the bakery. All of it to Tara." He nodded, his face grim, and said my parents had finalized it weeks ago. Cynthia, my mom, was sitting across from me, her hands folded tightly. I turned to her, barely holding it together. "Mom, what is this? I've been keeping that bakery alive. $200,000 of my own money, my savings, my overtime. And you're giving it to Tara." Her eyes darted away, but I pressed harder. "Explain it. Now." Mom shifted in her chair, her voice soft but firm. "Tara's had a rough time. Her business ventures failed, and she needs something stable. The bakery will give her a fresh start." I couldn't believe it. A fresh start. For Tara, who'd never once helped, I leaned forward, my words sharp. "And what about me? I gave up everything, my plans, my future, to keep this family afloat. Doesn't that count?" Mom's response was a vague mumble. "We just want what's best for both of you." It was a cop-out, and it burned. I pushed the folder back toward Mr. Reed, my hands trembling with rage. "You know I've paid for every repair, every bill, every supplier for that place. And this is how you repay me." Mom tried to interrupt, but I cut her off. "No, Mom. I'm done listening to excuses." I stood up, my chair scraping the floor. "Mr. Reed stayed silent, his pen frozen over his notepad. I could feel Mom's eyes on me, but I didn't look back. I'd poured my life into that bakery, and they'd handed it to someone who didn't care. Walking out, I felt a fire in my chest. This wasn't just about money, it was about betrayal. My parents had watched me sacrifice for years, knowing they'd cut me out. I got into my car, the weight of their decision sinking in. As I drove home, my mind raced. Why Tara? Why not me? I thought about every check I'd written, every late night balancing their books. The bakery wasn't just a business. It was our family's heart, built from my grandparents' sweat and love. And they chose her over me. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white. I wasn't going to let this slide. I'd been the one holding everything together, and now I saw it clearly. They'd taken me for granted. Mom's words echoed in my head, her weak defense of Tara, her refusal to acknowledge my effort. It wasn't just unfair. It was wrong. I didn't know what I'd do next, but one thing was certain: I wasn't going to keep playing their game. I'd find a way to take back what was rightfully mine, no matter what it took. The next morning, I sat in my kitchen with a plan. The sting of that will was still raw, but I wasn't going to let my parents' betrayal define me. I opened my laptop and started canceling every payment I'd been making for them. First, I pulled the plug on their home utilities: electricity, water, internet, gone. Then, I stopped the automatic transfers for the bakery's expenses, supplier invoices, delivery services, even the monthly maintenance for their ancient ovens. I didn't hesitate. For years, I'd been their financial lifeline, and they'd thrown it back in my face. No more. I drove to the bakery, my pulse racing. It wasn't just about the money, it was about respect. When I walked in, Paul, my dad, was behind the counter sorting receipts. The familiar smell of fresh bread hit me, but I pushed it aside. "Dad, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady but sharp. He looked up surprised, and I didn't give him a chance to sidetrack me. I've been paying for this place every bill, every repair, every delivery. $200,000 over 3 years. My money. And you and Mom decided Tara gets it all. I laid out the numbers: 10,000 for equipment, 15 for suppliers, thousands more for utilities. His face went pale, but I kept going. I gave up my own plans to keep this alive. And for what Dad fidgeted, his eyes avoiding mine. Tara's had a tough time, he said quietly. She needs this more than you do. You're doing fine. Fine. I almost laughed. Fine. I snapped. I've been working myself to the bone, Dad. I've paid for your house, your groceries, this bakery. And you think Tara, who's never contributed a cent, deserves it? He started to respond, but his words were weak. Something about family sticking together. It was the same tired excuse I'd heard from Mom. I shook my head. You've made your choice. I'm done footing the bill. I turned to leave, my heart pounding. As I stepped out, a strange relief washed over me. I'd carried their weight for so long, and letting it go felt like breaking free. But it hurt too, knowing they'd dismissed everything I'd done. Back home, my phone buzzed. It was Joan Phillips, a family friend who'd always been straight with me. Her text was short. Heard about the will. You okay? You need to stand up for yourself. I stared at the message, her words sinking in. Joan was right, I couldn't keep playing their game. I'd been too giving, too trusting, and it had cost me. I opened my banking app and started digging through my accounts. The numbers were staggering. Over 3 years, I'd funneled nearly $200,000 into their lives: utilities, bakery costs, even random expenses they'd called emergencies. I'd never questioned it, thinking I was helping family. Now I saw it differently. Every dollar I'd spent was a dollar I didn't have for my own future. A house, a savings account, a life of my own. I felt a mix of anger and clarity. They'd leaned on me knowing they'd give it all to Tara. It wasn't just unfair. It was a betrayal of everything I'd worked for. I closed the app, my resolve hardening. I wasn't just stopping the payments. I was done being their safety net. Dad's words echoed in my mind, his weak defense of Tara, his refusal to see my side. I thought about the bakery, its worn counters, and warm memories now tainted by their decision. I'd poured my heart into that place, and they'd handed it to someone who didn't care. But I wasn't powerless. I'd find a way to take control, to show them I wasn't invisible. Joan's text was a reminder I had to fight for myself no matter what came next. 2 weeks later, Joan showed up at my office with a folder. She didn't waste time with small talk, just handed it to me with a serious look. You need to see this, she said. Inside were bank statements and loan documents tied to the family bakery. My stomach dropped as I scanned the pages. The bakery was on the brink of foreclosure, drowning in a loan my parents had taken out years ago. Joan pointed to a line showing monthly payments labeled maintenance costs. I froze. Those were the payments I'd been making for 4 years, 3 years of steady support, and another year of smaller sporadic checks. I'd been told it was for repairs, supplies, upkeep. It wasn't. I'd been paying off their debt. They lied to you, Joan said, her voice low but firm. Mom and Dad knew you were covering the loan, not some random expenses. I felt my chest tighten, like the air had been sucked out of the room. All those years I'd trusted them, writing checks without question, thinking I was saving the bakery. They'd used me, funneled my money to clear a debt they never mentioned. I thought of Tara, blissfully unaware, while I'd been their cash machine. The betrayal cut deeper than the will. This wasn't just about favoring her. They'd deliberately hidden the truth to keep me on the hook. I called the bank that afternoon, my hands shaking as I dialed. The loan officer confirmed it. The bakery's debt was real, and my payments disguised as maintenance had kept it from being seized. I asked for every document they had: loan agreements, payment records, everything. By the next day, I had a stack of papers proving I'd been their lifeline. The bank didn't sugarcoat it. Foreclosure was looming, and without my money, the bakery was done. But there was a twist. Since I'd been the one making payments, they offered me first dibs to buy the bakery outright. They'd sent an official letter with the details. When the letter arrived, I read it 3 times to be sure. It was clear I could purchase the bakery at a reduced price, no strings attached. I sat back staring at the words. This was my chance not just to save the place I'd poured my heart into, but to take it back from the people who'd taken me for granted. Mom and Dad's lies had unraveled, and Tara's claim to the bakery felt like a cruel joke. I wasn't just angry. I was done being their pawn. The bakery wasn't theirs to give away anymore. I'd make sure of it. I leaned back in my chair, the folder still open on my desk. Joan had been right to push me. Without her, I might never have known the truth. I thought about Mom and Dad, how they'd played me for years, calling my payments emergency fixes while they planned to hand everything to Tara. It wasn't just about money, it was about trust, and they'd shattered it. I pictured the bakery, its worn counters and warm ovens, a place I'd loved since I was a kid. I'd kept it alive, not them, and now I had a shot to claim it for myself. My resolve hardened as I folded the bank's letter. This wasn't about revenge, it was about justice. I'd been the one holding the bakery together, and I wasn't going to let it slip away. The thought of Tara walking away with it after everything I'd done was unbearable. I didn't know how they'd react when I made my move, but I was ready to fight. The bakery was more than a business, it was my legacy too, and I was done letting anyone else control it. When I got the bank's letter, I knew what I had to do. I drained my savings, every penny I'd scraped together, and finalized the purchase with the bank. By the end of the week, the papers were signed, and I was the legal owner of the family bakery. It felt surreal holding the deed in my hands, knowing I'd taken back what was rightfully mine. For the first time, I wasn't just the one paying the bills, I was in charge. A few days later, Tara showed up at my house unannounced. She stormed in, her face flushed, clutching a copy of the will. "You can't just take the bakery," she snapped. "That's mine. Mom and Dad promised it to me." I crossed my arms, keeping my voice calm but firm. "Tara, you didn't put a dime into that place." "I did. I paid off the debts, kept it running. It's mine now, fair and square." Her eyes widened and she started arguing, demanding we split ownership. I cut her off. "No, you don't get to waltz in and claim something you never cared about. This conversation's over." She left, slamming the door, but I didn't flinch. I was done bending. That evening, an email from Mom and Dad popped up. They wrote about finding a fair solution and keeping the family together, urging me to negotiate with Tara. I read it once, then deleted it. Their words felt hollow, like another attempt to guilt me into giving up what I'd earned. I wasn't going to play their game anymore. They'd made their choice when they hid the truth and handed everything to Tara. I didn't owe them a response. The next day, Denise Scott, a close friend who'd always been there for me, stopped by my office. She sat across from me, her expression steady. "You did the right thing," she said. "Don't let them make you doubt yourself. You fought for that bakery, and it's yours." Her words hit hard, grounding me. Denise didn't sugarcoat things, she knew what I'd been through, and her support felt like a lifeline. I nodded, grateful for her encouragement. "I'm not backing down," I told her. She smiled. "Good. Stay strong." With the bakery officially mine, I got to work. I hired a contractor to fix the outdated wiring and replace the cracked countertops. The place needed a fresh start, just like I did. I brought in new staff, reliable people who cared about the business, not just a paycheck. I spent hours interviewing bakers, training them on my grandparents' old recipes, the ones I'd learned as a kid. Every decision, from choosing suppliers to updating the menu, was mine to make. It was exhausting, but it felt right. For the first time, I wasn't just keeping the bakery afloat, I was building something of my own. Standing behind the counter one evening, I looked around at the polished surfaces and the new faces working beside me. A quiet pride settled in my chest. This was my bakery now, not just a family heirloom I'd been propping up. I thought about all the years I'd poured into it, all the sacrifices I'd made, and how Mom, Dad, and Tara had taken it for granted. Owning it didn't erase the hurt. but it gave me control. I wasn't the invisible daughter anymore. I was the one calling the shots, and that felt like a victory worth fighting for. A month later, my phone lit up with notifications. Tara had posted on Facebook a long, dramatic rant accusing me of stealing the family bakery. She painted me as the villain, claiming I'd snatched it from under her nose, betraying Mom and Dad's wishes. Her words were sharp, meant to wound, and they sparked a firestorm online. Comments poured in, some from people I barely knew, taking sides in a story they didn't understand. I read the post once, my jaw tight, but I didn't respond. I wasn't going to play her game on a public stage. To my surprise, the tide turned quickly. Neighbors who'd known me for years left comments defending me. "Kristen kept that bakery alive," one wrote. Another, a regular customer, added, "You've got some nerve, Tara, after everything she's done." Friends from town chimed in too, calling out Tara's absence while I'd been pouring my life into the business. Their support caught me off guard, a reminder that not everyone bought her story. It didn't erase the sting of her words, but it made me feel seen, like my efforts hadn't gone unnoticed by everyone. Then came the lawsuit. Tara and Stephen, her husband, hired a lawyer to challenge my ownership of the bakery. They claimed I'd manipulated the situation, that the will entitled Tara to the business. I wasn't worried. I had the bank's documents, payment records, and the deed in my name. When I met with my own lawyer, she was blunt. "They've got nothing." The case fell apart in weeks, dismissed for lack of evidence. Tara and Stephen had no proof to back their claims, and the judge didn't entertain their flimsy arguments. It was a hollow victory, though. The fact that they'd dragged me to court at all left a bitter taste. A few days later, a handwritten letter arrived from Carol Harris, my aunt. It was pages of scolding, accusing me of tearing the family apart and being selfish. "You've hurt your parents deeply," she wrote, as if I were the one who'd lied and schemed. I skimmed it, then tossed it in the trash. Carol hadn't been there when I was paying the bakery's debts or keeping the lights on at Mom and Dad's house. Her opinion didn't matter. I wasn't going to let guilt trips pull me back into their mess. I'd had enough. I blocked Mom, Dad, Tara, and anyone else who might try to drag me down. Their numbers went straight to voicemail, their emails to spam, and their social media profiles disappeared from my feeds. It wasn't easy. Cutting off family felt like carving out a piece of myself, but I needed the space. Every call, every message was just another attempt to manipulate me. I was done being their doormat. With my family out of the picture, I threw myself into work. My accounting job kept me grounded. Numbers didn't lie, and they didn't play favorites. I spent mornings crunching figures for clients, finding a strange comfort in the order of it all. Afternoons were for the bakery. I'd walk through the doors, check on the new staff, and review sales. The place was thriving, with fresh paint on the walls and a steady stream of customers. I'd tweaked the menu, bringing back old family recipes and adding new ones. Watching people line up for our bread, smiling as they left, gave me a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. I stood behind the counter one evening, taking it all in. The bakery wasn't just a business, it was proof I could stand on my own. Tara's post, the lawsuit. Carol's letter, they were noise, nothing more. I'd fought for this place and I'd won. My family's betrayal still stung, but it didn't define me. I had my work, my bakery, and a community that had my back. That was enough for now. 6 months later, I stood in my renovated bakery. The place was buzzing, new tables packed with customers, a second oven churning out fresh loaves, and a display case filled with pastries I'd spent months perfecting. The business was thriving, pulling in a steady $1,500 a month in profit. I'd added a small coffee bar in the corner, a risky move that paid off with a loyal morning crowd. Every dollar felt like proof I'd made the right call, building something solid on my own terms. I heard through Joan that Tara was struggling. She'd taken a job at a retail store, earning $800 a month, barely enough to get by. She and Stephen were scraping together rent for a cramped apartment, their plans for a big house long gone. I didn't feel sorry for her, not after everything. She'd had her chances, but instead of stepping up, she'd lashed out, expecting handouts. The community hadn't forgotten her public stunt either. Joan told me people in town had stopped inviting Tara to events their trust in her eroded after her accusations against me. It was a harsh lesson, but one she'd brought on herself. Mom and Dad weren't doing much better. Joan mentioned they'd moved into a small rental living off a combined $1,200 a month in assistance. Their old house, the one I'd paid the bills for, was gone, sold to cover debts I hadn't known about back then. I didn't know the details and I didn't care to ask. They'd made their choices just as I had. The bakery was mine now and they had no part in it. Joan said they rarely spoke of me as if I'd become a ghost in their lives. That hurt, but it also freed me. Sitting with Joan over coffee one afternoon, she filled me in on the town's gossip. "People respect what you've done," she said, stirring her drink. Tara's post backfired. Folks saw through it. I nodded, grateful for the clarity. The community's support had carried me through the worst of it, a reminder that family isn't just blood, it's the people who show up. I'd spent years putting my parents and Tara first, only to be pushed aside. Now I saw it clearly. Their betrayal wasn't my fault. It was their failure to value me. Looking back, I realized how much I'd grown. I used to think family meant sacrificing everything, my money, my dreams, my time. But that blind loyalty had nearly broken me. Cutting them off wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I'd learned to put myself first to build a life that didn't revolve around their needs. The bakery was more than a business. It was a symbol of my independence. I didn't regret a single step, not the fight to buy it, not the decision to walk away from their drama. I'd found my own worth, and that was enough. To everyone who's followed this story, thank you. Your support means the world, especially when I was navigating the hardest parts. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever faced unfairness in your family? How did you handle it? Share in the comments and let's talk about what it means to stand up for yourself. This journey wasn't just about a bakery, it was about reclaiming my life.